Hey guys, it's mcfixit here. We're going to be taking this splice and making a really cool stencil die out of it. We're going to be kind of using two different methods. We're going to be using the hotbed method and also just some Lotion dye because I don't want it to kind of run. I may change up the colors too from this kind of picture as I go about it. I kind of want to see what I want to do as we do it. That's just the thing I made on Photoshop, and so we're going to walk you through all the tools, all the supplies, exactly how to do this. So first thing you're going to want is a disc. I'm choosing a white disc because I'm going to leave some of this intentionally white on here to give it a better pop feel. I mean, you could make it all different colors, or if your disc maybe was yellow to begin with, this could work really awesome. But I'm just going to clean it off with some acetone right over here and paper towels. We're going to be using, like I said, a hotbed dye. So we have an electric burner. It's better to do this like out in a garage on a wood table, just an old pan. You're going to need the stencil with a Cricut, and you go ahead and cut your stencil. It's hard to see right now, but it will become a little clearer. This is a white Oracle 5160. Then I have a bunch of transfer paper. You can get it in a big, huge roll that should last pretty much a lifetime, because I get about 10 to 15 discs out of each one of these transfer papers. This is a newer one, and all I did was just like fold it in half and fold it in half and just drew a line with a Sharpie. Then I just took a disc and drew a circle around it once I squared it all up. Make sure you have lots of paper towels. Because we are doing a dye with Lotion, you're going to use like a Pro Chem dye, works really well. And so that's the Sun Yellow, and this is just Dollar Tree Lotion. It's a cocoa butter. If you like cocoa butter smell, if not, find something you like the smell of, because it will have a little bit of residue. Dawn dish soap and water, so filled it all the way full with water, put a couple drops of Dawn dish soap. We're going to be using iDye Poly black and red, and pretty much all I did was take these small jars, fill it up with warm water, and take half of one of the iDye Polys, just half of it. Dump it in there, shake it up really well, and there are the two. I already mentioned acetone. I do like to have kind of a towel, scissors. We're going to be using 1/4 teaspoon to fill this little, I think it's a 3 or 4 ounce little jar. Sharpie is really helpful. Some kind of scraper tool. You can use a credit card as well, and something to weed your stencil. It just really helps to have kind of, this is just a pick. I've used it many times, works really well, pretty sharp actually. And so that helps you kind of get it. Then I just built this. This is a 3D print I made that just kind of helps center up discs. You don't have to have this. It just helps me, especially when there's a camera in my view all the time. This really does help get a little bit better. I'm going to try to give you the best camera angles I can the whole time. Sometimes it's difficult though. So let's go ahead and jump in to this disc dye. So the first thing I like to do is just go ahead and set up my station. And so I kind of scoot pretty much everything off to the side, and we will start by mixing in some dye for this right here. So it's Sun Yellow by Pro Chem dye. Looks very dark, I know. There is a little bit of remnant in this, so the first thing I like to still do is just go ahead and squeeze a little bit in. Kind of get that flat on the bottom. Go ahead and grab that 1/4. And the other thing you can do, I don't know if I mentioned a funnel, but funnels really do help. So I am going to grab the little funnel guy and just toss it in there. It was on top of the black, so I don't know if I actually mentioned that, but if not, figure something out to get it in. And so you're pretty much done with that now. Go ahead and squeeze more in there. And you're going to fill it up almost to the top. You don't want it really overflowing because you need room for it to kind of mix around. And if you want it to glow in the dark a little bit, I don't think I mentioned this, but you can always, if you have room, which you can see I still have a lot of room in there, you can grab a little bit of spike it. You don't have to add much, but it does kind of help give you a little bit of an extra glow to it. And it's what I had in here before, so I'm just going to kind of do the same thing so my bottle stays consistent. You definitely don't have to do that, but if you have it laying around and you want a little UV action. So that's pretty well mixed. We're going to add a little bit more because I do want this thing pretty full. But if you have it too full at the beginning, it's really, really hard to mix it properly. And I always hold my finger on the cap. You can bang it against a table too. That sometimes helps. So that is all set. If you have not mixed your dye, again, you're going to take warm water in just a kind of a mason kind of jar, half of one of these packets, dump it in, mix it together, you're done. So I have the black and I have the red done like that. So the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and grab our disc. Remember, you can use any type of disc. White is going to work best if you want a design that looks like what I'm going to do. But if not, the lighter the color, it always works the best. Just a couple of dips from the acetone. It will start eating away that top layer. And I try to go pretty quick on this. And if you want any of your stamp remaining, just go ahead and don't do what I just did. You can normally dye over the stamp pretty easily. If you use acetone in your mixture, which I'm not doing, do note that it will leave that residue. So I like to always lift it up. And you can still see it if you look at a good enough angle, and I still have the sticker on it, it's brand new. But yeah, just make sure it is exactly what you want. And then you are done for that right now. You can go ahead and put your acetone away. So we'll be using this later. This is what I put down a lot of times just to kind of keep my table from turning too quickly. So we're going to go ahead and grab the stencil. You can go ahead and put your transfer paper off to the side right now because you're not going to need it. Now we have to decide what colors we are going to choose to do. I actually don't like this the more I'm looking at it because I think I want it yellow around the edges, then red in the center. And because it's a white disc, I want to save the white lines, but I also think I want to have this look more like the original logo, make this red, then make this white. So it just pops a little bit more with the white disc. So when you're looking at your disc, you will have the lines that go this way white. Then you will also have pretty much the entire part minus what's black on here, which would be red. And so I think that's the direction I want to head. When I was making this in Photoshop, I was just kind of doing it quick and didn't really care too much about colors. And I will add one other thing. You can already see, I tried my best with the Cricut. A lot of times with these finite details, I don't know how well you're gonna be able to see that. You see the blue popping through? That is where it's already kind of come off. Because it's so small. So my basket is not going to look near as good as this, but I think it's going to turn out okay. You're going to be able to tell it's a basket, but it's just not going to be as good. So what I like to do is I like to go ahead and pull everything that is going to be black, because you have to start with the darkest color first. So we'll do black, and then we'll do a bed dye or a hotbed dye with red, then we'll have to leave this yellow on for quite a bit of time, and so that will be the thing that goes around the whole thing. So I'm going to start with the bigger part first. This is going to make it a little bit easier to see what's going on. So you're taking everything off that is going to be black, and sometimes, especially when you make these at home, probably should have said have a razor blade handy, because sometimes it goes a little haywire. Oh no, it's working. So right here, you're going to want to push down because it has a piece that needs to stay. Same thing right here. And I cut this the other day, and my garage is a wee bit cold, so sometimes these stencils do not want to work as well. I need to just start keeping them in my house. I just always bring them home after I cut them and just throw them in the garage. Okay, so that was a whole lot of what we're going to do. Just ball that up, have a trash can nearby, and toss it. Okay, I'm really liking how that's looking already. So you can see that is all of this that will become black. And you might be worried about the corner. You shouldn't be, because the disc is not big enough. So it will work perfectly. And there is a good chance I might even do a bit of a spin dye around the edge, because I do like it black around the edge a lot of times. Because I didn't measure this probably as good as I should have, and so I might run out of disc on the side there. So the next thing is to get everything else that's going to be black, and so there's a couple ways you can do this. You can just start pulling it quick. I recommend against that, but I'm going to actually probably push some of this stuff down a little bit. So I'm just scraping at about a 45-degree angle, hoping that it sticks a little bit better. And so let's start with the dinosaur. So I'm going to start right here on kind of the bigger part, and hoping some of this just stays like it should. So far we're looking good. And I use my weeding tool to assist whenever needed. So it gets tricky when you get into these parts, and sometimes it helps to just have a pair of scissors and go boop. And then you've gone ahead and cut that. And then it gives you just a little bit easier ways of doing it. Because what I don't want is too much coming up too fast. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this because it's just kind of getting in my way. I know it seems weird, but it is actually really good to do. So this is going to be probably the hardest part of the design, is trying to get some of this to stick. I know I'm not going to be able to get all of it, because that's just how stencil dies work. They're not perfect. But you try to get as much of the original down to where it looks as good as possible. Little T-Rex hands, get out of there. I think they'd be easy because they're small, but they're not. So I'm probably going to pull this up and kind of do that little cut thing I was showing you. It just really helps making it a little smoother, making sure you get what you want down. So just ball that up. Okay. So remember, I wanted the letters to stay white, and then eventually when we get to the red, I'm gonna pull out the red. But so far that's starting to look really good. I still have to get the teeth, I still have to get the disc, and I have to get the basket. So remember, the teeth are gonna stay black. So we need to pull, or going to turn black, so we need to go ahead and pull that. So just take your time on these parts. It's really easy to damage your stencil. So just do your best to get as much of it as you can without destroying your stencil. That looks good right there. Now we got the bottom set of teeth to get out. And so this is going to be the part that honestly will be the easiest to have bleed through. And so we're going to be real careful when we do this to hopefully not get much bleed through from not having it down all the way. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and get the line from where the disc is flying into the basket. I'm going to go ahead and clean off my hands for a second. Okay, so now we're going to try to get the basket the best we can, and it is probably not going to come out super well. I'm actually going to push it down, see if we can try to get it. No, but it's fine. You can definitely tell it's going to be a basket. I shouldn't have probably done with so much detail because of how small it was, but that's okay. So I did a little boo-boo there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the corner. I just did it a little too hard to really hopefully not have this bleed through. Then I'm going to grab a piece. And so I'm just kind of double layering it. And so you're going to have to cut it to size. This is very easy to do when you're working with nope, that's not where I want it. It's very close, but not exact. Okay, so I'm thinking that's looking really, really good right now. And so I like how that's looking. So we will just go ahead. And I noticed another part. I think I might have accidentally cut it with the scissors trying to go fast. And so right down here where it says parked, or right underneath where it says parked, I think I just cut that edge off just a little bit. So I'm gonna try to kind of doctor it up a little bit, and hopefully that works right there. So none of these are ever perfect, like I've said before, but the goal is that it looks as good as you can get it. So I do like that the 5160 that is white, you can see the blue underneath. The clear ones I like for putting over a disc, but they're really hard to see on video, and even in real life too. So the next thing I'm gonna do, not gonna pull that off yet. I'm gonna go ahead and try to line this up the best I can. This just helps give me a little bit better idea for this specific disc. Then I go ahead and kind of, I don't really fold it in half, I just fold the edges. So right here, I'm gonna do the same thing on this side, because that just gives me a little bit of an ability to make a good clean mark. I do like when the disc is nice and lined up. Do remember I kind of cut this one little corner a little bit, so you got to kind of take that into effect. Do know if you put the marker on here, you do have a chance that that transfer paper will pick some of it up, especially in some of those areas. So let's get everything back a little bit so I can get this transfer paper on here really good. And if it's curling, sometimes you need to just go ahead and kind of almost like roll it backwards without messing up your stencil. And a lot of times it will leave it a little bit flatter. So obviously the disc I had traced was a little bit bigger, so I'm going to try to focus on putting this on the top. So you're going to go ahead and take this, and this is, you don't have to get all the air bubbles out of this, it doesn't really matter. It's more you just want to make sure you pick up all of the pieces. So just do that for a few seconds. Grab your pick, go up to one of the corners, and begin to peel it back. Okay, part of the D did not, or maybe it was the R, did not want to come off. So I'm pulling it at about a 45-degree angle. That looks really, really solid. You can go ahead and discard that. We are going to go ahead and get our disc nice and centered up. Going to set that down. Make sure you don't put it face down, you put it face up. Okay, that's right where I like it. So the reason I like this thing is it kind of like locks it in place, and just makes it a little easier to kind of get that centered up. And with a disc this big, or a disc die this big, it should work really, really well. And so I like to go in the center and try to push it down first, and then work myself around the edges. We're going to spend a whole lot more time getting all the air bubbles out. This is just to get it onto the disc. I hope that makes sense. I'm liking it. So we can go ahead and move this out of the way. Again, that was optional. If it's something you want to do, you can go and find the information at Thingsverse to be able to print that. So I'm just folding this into the center. And I think I will have to probably add a little bit of spin dye to it. Not much, just a little, just to get that edge. Unless I like how it looks, then I just do it. It's my disc, so if I like how it looks without it, I just don't do the spin dye. Okay. Now this is where we want to be a little more careful as we begin to pull this. Hopefully keeping all of it where it needs to be. Looking really good so far. And the beauty of that clear transfer paper is you can see when you kind of have messed up. So I like that. Go ahead and take your paper, the other side, and put it down on there. I do know originally this is white, and I just changed it out for one of the stencils because I like the blue, because they're both white, and so sometimes you can mess them up. So just a little extra tip there. So we're going to spend quite a bit of time just working on getting this to be nice and tight. So I'm just going to work on the rim of it first. And you know what I might do? I might just get a razor blade and cut that, because there's a lot of times you can cut them if you are just don't have a Cricut and you want to do something like this. So you don't want to cut into the disc, you just want to cut along the edges. Yeah, let's just do that. Just a little bit of hang up right there. Again, you're not just lightly going with the knife. Don't go crazy, because you can cut your disc and you don't want to do that. I mean, you're probably going to cut it on a tree if you throw like I do, but because that's just how I like to play disc golf. You may not see that, but that's from a previous die. I guess I had a piece that came off and I didn't even realize it. So just a couple more of those. So you just kind of go with the direction of the cut. Look, I had another piece over here. I don't remember which one I dyed last, which would have left that. But that stencil worked really well holding, or not the stencil, the transfer paper worked really well holding that previous design on there. Yeah, I think I'm gonna like this better than just a straight. Circle around the edge. So just take your time doing this. You don't have to do this. It's whatever you want to do. It's your disc. Have fun with it. If you want to do a spin dye, they're real simple. You just get a record player and just put some acetone and black dye on it, and it will capture it really, really well. Okay, it is a little sticky around the back side, but I am a-okay with that, because you have all these little pieces. So if you wanted to cut all those, you could. I'm not going to. I'm really just going to focus on getting all of the air bubbles out. And honestly, a lot of times it's easier to do without a glove on, because I think the heat in your hand helps. Obviously, we're going to use a tool as well, but with air bubbles, I'm not worried if they're in the center. I'm only worried if they're like really, really close to the edge, because that's how you get leaks. So if they're right on the middle, I'm not too worried. But I don't know if it's because it's cold in my garage and that's why my hand works well of just pushing these air bubbles out. I will say be careful of scraping too hard with this tool. I have had some issues with it breaking it, so take that with a little bit of grain of salt if you're just pushing real hard with that tool. It does work really well, but again, you don't want to do it too hard. Also, if you notice any of the teeth aren't perfect, this is a great time to fix that. They all look pretty good to me. The other kind of cool thing is you can still see where it says splice right behind the part. So I do like that too. And you can actually see the numbers right there. And so they should be pretty visible when we actually die this too. So just do this for a few minutes till you get all the air bubbles out. Again, you can use a scraper tool. Just be careful how hard you do scrape it. Okay, so once you think you like where you're at, go ahead and get your black dye. Go ahead and pour it into your skillet. You don't need a ton. You just want to make sure kind of the edge can be filled. Then go ahead and twist it back on gently. Then you can go ahead and turn this on. I only put it on about 2.5 to 3, right in there. Then as soon as it starts smoking, you know you are good to go. While you're waiting on that, go ahead and feel free to just continue pressing all this down, because it is really important that you get it really good, because otherwise your disc dye will not look as good as you thought it was going to. Even along the edges here is important. And again, if you want to cut some of those off, you can. I don't think it's super necessary, but if you think it's going to potentially collect dye, then just go ahead and do it. Remember, you can just cut those off if you'd like. That's almost ready. I do mix it a couple of times in the pan just to make sure we're good, ready to rock and roll. Okay, so this is starting to smoke just a little bit, so we're going to go ahead and turn it off and get everything kind of set up to go ahead and put it in. So I do like to get this towel out just to have it nice and ready. And so because that is starting to smoke, we're going to kind of stir it once or twice more. Then double check everything, make sure you are ready to go ahead and put this in. And so I think we're ready. And so I'm going to just kind of go ahead and put it in on the side, and just like that. And if you did get a little bit on the edges, you can always take a Q-tip or something and just get it off. It's pretty easy to do. It did splash just a little, and I don't like when it does that, but that does help just kind of get some of that off. Or you can also just take a paper towel. So we're gonna go ahead and let this thing sit for a solid 5 minutes in this hotbed. And so pretty much whatever is on there, you can actually see it's already starting to work if you look carefully there, which is pretty awesome. This thing does a really good job, these hotbeds, of just really soaking in that dye without any acetone. Remember, we have not put any acetone in the solution. We only put it on the disc to remove some of the stamp, actually all of the stamp on this one. So go ahead, let that sit 5 minutes. Okay, now that's been 5 minutes, I'm gonna grab a couple more paper towels. I'm gonna scoot this over and scoot this over a little bit. And we're gonna go ahead and pick it up out of the hotbed, trying to let any of it drop off. I'm just gonna set it down on there, move that hotbed out of the way, and go ahead and flip it over and see how we're looking. I do think I want to put it in for just a few more seconds, so I am gonna turn this back on over here. It's not as bright as I'd like it to be in a few spots, so I'm going to add just a little bit more in, making sure it is deep enough, but it looks really good besides that. There's a little bit here that is not as dark as I'd want, and a little bit right there. So just kind of keep wiping off your hands. That should not take too long to get that heated up to temperature over here. And then we'll go ahead and put it back down in. But yeah, starting to look really good already. And you can see I did have a little bit on the edge, so I probably will end up spin dyeing just the edge of at least the back side. Maybe not, you never know. I kind of just leave it to be and kind of go when we get to that point. But yeah, there are a couple of spots that aren't as dark as I would like that to be. So just kind of mixing that up. Almost there. I am liking how that looks though. That's going to look really sharp. Okay, just starting to smoke a little bit. Go ahead and turn it off. And then we'll just go ahead and gently set this back down in there. I'm trying to remember where it was. I'm going to kind of move it to a little different location than it was the first time. Okay, let's go ahead and pick it back up and try it again. I really do like how this one is starting to look. I think it is better that I put it in the hotbed just for a few more moments to make sure it was as black as I wanted it to be. Spray some Dawn dish soap and water on it, get it nice and cleaned up once we got it to how we want it. So just like so. I'm just going to kind of set this off to the side for a second because we do have to get this black back in here so we can do the next color dye. So it's just using a small funnel and hopefully not pouring it all over the place like I just did. That's why we're working on a very old surface. but it doesn't matter. This is why you don't do this on your kitchen table, because you would make whoever you lived with mad. If you live by yourself, do whatever you want, but not worth getting your roommates or your spouse mad at you because you decided to do it on the kitchen table. But you know, you do you. It's very easy to spill things, and they're dyes, so they're gonna make a mess. So the next thing we need to do is actually go ahead and clean our pan as well. So I would encourage Dawn dish soap because it works really good cutting grease and dye out of a pan. Don't know if I've mentioned this in this video. Do not ever use this pan to eat out of in the future. This just needs to be something you have that is used, or I mean, I guess you could buy a new one to do this, but just, yeah, don't eat out of it. This one has been used for many, many years. I think it's been, wow, 10 or 12 years. It's actually like something we used and ate out of. So we're gonna go ahead and add the red eye dye poly. Again, that's just half of the bag with warm water. And you can go ahead and put that on there and go ahead and start warming it up. Again, I put that on about a 2 or a 3. Now this is when you have to make some decisions. And we'll go back to our drawing. I do want to make sure my hands are nice and dry for this. So we talked about making this part red, and this part red, and this part red as well. Then the only thing we were going to have that is yellow is this line right here that's kind of white right now, but that's going to be our yellow part. And so we have kind of changed a little bit up from my initial thing. That does happen, and that is okay. The other thing we're going to want to do is leave the actual letters white. Then the inside part where it says parked, we'll take that out and make those red. So we're going to want to do that first. And so go ahead and we'll go ahead and get that P. Go ahead and start pulling it up and out. And that A, go ahead and start getting it pulled up. We'll also need to get the center of the P out, and the A, and the R, and the D. So and that is almost just about ready over there, so do keep an eye on your, there it goes. Oh, don't put it on max, put it on off. And I'm just gonna let that sit on the burner because we still have a bit more work to do. And so just take your time pulling this off. You don't need to be in any rush right now. And I just found this, the font on dafont.com, or I think it's .com. It's a font place that has literally, people have made every kind of font out there and posted it for free. Most of it is, you'll want to check the usage, but most of the time you can use it as needed, which is pretty stinking awesome. Sometimes you do have to pay for them if you're doing like commercial production stuff. So that is all the lettering we're going to need to pull off. Then we're going to go ahead and look at our design and figure out what else we want to pull off to make this happen. So I think the only other thing is this big section in this. And so we'll just go ahead and start right here. Start pulling all of that off. Don't forget this part right down here as well. And then we just have this top part, and then we're pretty much ready to go ahead and dye it into the red dye. So just take your time pulling this apart. Should go relatively quick because you don't have to care super much, but do take your time, do it well. And if you wanted to leave all this white, you definitely could. That is completely an option that you have to decide what colors you want it to actually be in the end. But I thought this might look really good, a little bit more like the original design of Jurassic Park. And you're just going to want to make sure you get it out from all of the teeth and his beautiful little dinosaur hands. And this is one of those parts that did not work as well as I wanted it to, just because they were such tight cuts. Some of the rib marks, but I think that still has enough of the rib marks that you can tell what's going on with him. Just got a little bit more right here. And I love that you can kind of see Discmania little logo right there. That's pretty cool. I was not expecting it to come out as well. But again, if you hold it up at an angle, you can always pretty much still see it if it has been a top stamp from the factory, which I kind of like because sometimes you forget exactly what the disc is from time to time, especially if they're not marked on the back, but this one is marked on the back too. Just depends on what brand you prefer or have availability to. Almost done with the weeding here, and then we can go ahead and put it in the dye into that hotbed and make it happen. So you're going to look at it again, make sure you got everything that you want to come off that wants to be red, and make it red. So we're going to go ahead and kind of move everything back out of the way again. Go ahead and set up your beautiful old rag. And we are going to want to mix this up just a little bit, just to make sure. Now again, we don't have to put as much because it's just in the center here. And so go ahead and set it down gently, just like that. And go ahead and let that thing sit for a good solid 5 minutes, and then come back and give it a look at. So now that it's sat 5 minutes, we can go ahead and pick it up and begin to get some new paper towels and just begin to dry off the red dye from everywhere. The red dye will change the color of the black just slightly, not super, super bad, but it won't be as sharp. But it really does dye that really good red. We're going to use some Dawn dish soap and water and go ahead and clean up the disc. We only really have one more section left to do after this, and that's that little bit of yellow. But you do want to make sure all of the dye is up, so take your time, wipe all the way around it, make sure it's nice and clean and ready to go. Then next, it is time to go ahead and weed out the yellow. We will want to shake it up a little bit just to make sure we're ready to rock and roll. And it's just this little bit left. And so we will take our time to just pick the piece. It won't take really long, but I will say when it's down on the beds for a while, like it has been about 12 minutes now total, The first one was just over 5 minutes, and the second one was 5 minutes. It does become a little bit harder to get up. It's kind of adhered, I guess, to the plastic, but just take your time, peel it slowly. Um, you don't want to tear anything else that you don't want to. And then this lotion dye, we're just going to sit outside in the sun for about 2 hours. That seems to work pretty well. It's about 75, almost 80 degrees today, with some direct sunlight outside. I'm in my garage right now. So we're just going to kind of make it like mustard and like you're putting it on a hot dog, and just put a nice thick coating. You don't want to touch where the red dye is. It could mess that up and make it a little brown. So do your best to just put a nice little coating of mustard all the way around. Um, Sometimes you do get some clumps too. I had a little clump there I had to get out. Um, and you can always take whatever you need to, paper towel, and wipe up anything that looks like it has gone too far. But this will work really, really well of just dyeing this kind of a light yellow. It's not going to be as bright as a hotbed dye, but the lotion will work pretty well. I've done lots of dyes like this before. And fill in any spots that aren't as full as they should be, and go ahead and set this out in the sun for a full 2 hours. So I have now brought it back in. It was in the sun for just about 2 hours. And I'm taking just a paper towel, and you're just going to wipe off the dye, aka mustard, is exactly what it looks like right now. And you can see the yellow with the lighting that I have, these LED lights. It's kind of hard to see, but it really will pop once you see the white and the yellow and the red and the black all together. And so you just kind of wipe it off. You don't have to like be too careful with it because you're wiping it all off, and we'll make sure to clean the disc well afterwards as well. And so just kind of keep going around and around, getting to be nice and cleaned off. And once you got it pretty much all cleaned off, we are going to grab some Dawn dish soap and water, give it a good last spray down just to make sure we are nice and clean before we peel it off, because we do still have the white underneath where the stencil still is, and we want to ensure that that stays as white as possible. And go ahead and get your pick, and we'll just begin peeling. This will take a few minutes, but you're just going to peel all the remaining stencil off of the disc. Okay, here is the final reveal. You will want to kind of clean it off one last time. And you'll notice none of these disc dyes are ever perfect, but they always turn out pretty awesome. It does look like there was a little smudge of red that got just underneath the R on one of the lines that's going down, which is fine with me. Again, I feel like it has to be perfect. And really, the back edge isn't the best I've ever done. I probably should have put something on that edge before I started. But it's my disc. I'm going to be throwing it, and it's not going to change the flight pattern or anything like that. And I think it turned out really, really cool. You could honestly put either a black spin die on it or a red spin die. But you can also try to scrub some of that red off. But like I said, it doesn't really matter that much to me because that looks really cool. And you can still kind of see where it says splice on there and the numbers and everything else right there. I hope this was helpful to you. If you have any comments, please go ahead and put them in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching.